Now we have half a season left of the current regulation cycle. The 2022 regulations obviously being introduced in 2022, which was originally meant for 2021, but because of COVID, they were delayed by 1 year, and thank God that it was delayed because we got the one of the best title fights of all time. Now, before 2022, we had these, what some people would say boats, but I would say aerodynamical masterpieces. Just look at how complex these cars were, especially in 2018. But with that comes a lot of dirty air. That's why after they changed it in 2019 to make the aerodynamics a lot more simple, at least in the front wing, because other parts of the car, like the barge boards, remember barge boards, we don't have barge boards anymore. But the barge boards were still very complicated, still had dirty air, but the racing got a lot better. Sure, we had these massive gaps in some races, but within the midfield, there were quite a few midfield overtaking. Then we head to the 2022 regulations, which is probably the biggest regulation overhaul in F1 history. I mean, sure, if you compare a 2016 car to a car from the 80s, they look very different, but that's because they progress slowly over time. This was just, okay, we're going to remove all of your aero, you only have front and rear wings, and here you go. Yeah, that's basically how it was. Now in 2010's F1, the downforce were all generated from the aero, making development a lot easier because, okay, at this track, Monaco, just add more aero. For Monza, we remove aero, we simplify the wings. But since the aero is already very simplified in the 2022 regulations, you can't really do that. Red Bull proved that you can't really do that last year when they bought this abomination of a rear wing to Monza, because the downforce is now primarily generated from the floor thanks to ground effect. Now, what is ground effect? You should probably know by now, but ground effect, I'm just reading this off of Google. Ground effect is an aerodynamic principle where the shape of the car's underbody, particularly the diffuser, creates low pressure underneath the car, generating downforce and pulling the car towards the track. And in theory, this should also improve overtaking because, there's less aero, it's easier to follow now. But keyword follow, not overtake. We're gonna get into overtaking later, but following is easier, but not sure about overtaking. Now for car reveals, a lot of these weren't actually the cars that were going to be used in the season. Okay, so it was only Haas, Williams, and Red Bull that only used the show car for the reveal, and McLaren had the best reveal out of all of them, because they revealed it on Roblox. I'm not even joking, this was a thing at the time. Oh, what have we done? They had the Spice Girls before, they drove through Valencia before, and now they're doing it on Roblox. This is brilliant. Oh gosh. Nowadays, pretty much all the cars look the same because they're all copying Red Bull, and that's actually working because Red Bull are no longer the fastest car. And, the underbite, the overbite side pods, the push or pull rod suspensions, like excluding the Ferrari. The Ferrari is the only one that still has a unique shape. Excluding the Ferrari, if I took every single car in this year's grid, stripped them of their paint, pure carbon fiber, if I took all of those cars and line them up together, you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Oh yeah, the Aston Martin too. They have an interesting engine cover this year. But to start the regulations, every single car looked unique because no one has found the concept yet. They're still testing different concepts. And yeah, all of them look unique. Obviously Mercedes with their no side pods, they had an interesting render at first. And that would have been interesting to see that car on track instead of the one we actually got, which looked very fat. I should know a thing or two about being fat as well. Aston Martin looked unique with a million cooling vents, and then they switched to the Red Bull side pod mid-season. Every single team has switched to a Red Bull side pod at some point during this regulation cycle. And then we have Alpine, which I really like the look of the 2022 Alpine. And this was also unironically Alpine's best season in the 2022 regulation, so maybe they should have stick with this. And then Williams, who had, what you'd expect to start the season. And then people forget they also moved to the zero pod down the line. And once we finally hit the track of Barcelona preseason testing, these cars turned into basketballs because they were bouncing. Because of thank God porpoising. Side note, if you live in Indiana, I just want to say that you're a loser and revenge is sweet. Man, when TJ McConnell was crying on TV, I laughed so hard. He deserves it so much for being annoying in round 2. Same with Benedict Mathurin. And to explain in monkey terms, porpoising is when you run the car too low to the ground, and because of the ground effect, it'll just start bottoming out. And boom, you get bouncing when you reach a certain top speed. And your top speed can't actually be reached because of the bouncing. Remember Lewis Hamilton in Baku, his car losing the back end, going in a straight line. Now I'm sure one of these F1 teams, especially one of the most prolific F1 teams on the grid, won't complain about this to the FIA and will just outdevelop their way out of this because they're proven winners. But anyways, all this technical stuff aside, which has probably fried some of your brains, don't worry, it's frying mine too. Let's talk about the actual racing, which it was supposed to improve. Now, do I think the 2022 regulations was a success? I'm 40-60 on it. Because to start the regulations, we had amazing and close racing, like in Bahrain. To start the season, the battle between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Then Saudi Arabia. That felt like watching a basketball game, just a pure back and forth between Max and Charles. Chicane Barcelona had good racing, for crying out loud. Even after TD39, the racing was still great. Yes, TD39, the thing a lot of people hate, which I'm not completely against it. I mean, it gave us one of the more boring F1 seasons of all time. We'll get into that later. But I understand it for safety purposes. But come on, Toto. Just as Horner said,
you've got a problem, change your fucking car.
Then you change your car because Checo has been saying the car is fucked.
Well, he wasn't wrong though, was he? So yeah, 2022, I would say was a success of a year. Yes, we didn't get that, thrilling championship battle to the end, but Ferrari were kind of slapping themselves. Even without TD39, they probably would have lost the championship. But the racing was very close. And then 2023 rolls around. Oh gosh, we went from a year of close racing to absolutely abhorrent. There were still good races. I know people are gonna say, oh, but we had great races in 2023. But great races doesn't mean the season was good overall. 2015 had good races, Austin, Britain, Hungary, where that season was terrible. This season had great races, Zandvoort, Austin, Singapore, these were all great races, but the season as a whole was still terrible. A lot of these races would be absolute snooze fest. A season is bad when Monaco was arguably a top 5 race of the season. Although, yeah, that Monaco Grand Prix is actually pretty good remembering it now. Tracks that you didn't expect to be boring were indeed extremely boring. Brazil was boring. Your season is bad when Brazil is boring. Now 2024 rolls around, and we all know the story of the 2024 season. Red Bull had the fastest car to start off the year, then they became a midfield team, then McLaren suddenly jumps out of nowhere. Not really out of nowhere, you can slowly see it build up. And one of the best things of the 2024 season was that, the grid was very closely matched. But one of the biggest issues a close grid brings us is a lot of dirty air. And especially since the floors are getting more complicated, it's even more difficult to overtake because there's even more dirty air than the start of the regulations when things were still a lot simpler. I actually think 2024 provided pretty good racing. Not as good as 2022, but on par of seasons as like those from 2017 to 2020. 2021's obviously on a different pedestal. This year, the racing hasn't been great at all. Sure, it's closer, the cars are closer, so that leads to more strategical options like Red Bull in Spain, but overtaking as a whole is a lot more difficult. It's not close, and you see a lot of drivers backing out like 3 seconds so they don't cook their front tires. I don't know if this comparison will be blasphemous, but the kind of racing we're seeing is literally F1 esports, where it's now just a following contest. It's not a close wheel-to-wheel battle. Qualifying caps are also pretty similar, where the grid would be separated by less than a second. Now, there are two sides to the argument to this. One can say the previous regulations of cars were better because it provided better on-track racing, but another side can say, oh, these new regulations are better because it provides a bit more uncertainty to the strategy, which is another valid point. But in my opinion, I just prefer the previous regulations. Sure, the grid isn't as close as it is now, but the quality of racing, I would say, was a lot better, specifically 2019 to 2021, because 2017 wasn't that great. 2018 was better, but not as good as 2019 to 2021. But I will say this, qualifying nowadays is definitely a lot better. So in conclusion, I think these regulations failed, but worked at the same time. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, and it's funny how it's basically the opposite of the 2017 regulations, where the racing slowly got worse, and in the 2017 regulations, they slowly got better. Anyways, that'll do it for today's video. Let me know if I made a valid point or if I'm purely speaking out my ass. And let me know what you think about these new regulations as well. And if you have any hopes for the 2026 regulations, I don't think smaller cars would particularly fix overtaking, because overtaking was already difficult from 2014 to 2016, but we'll see. Anyways, thanks for watching and goodbye.